Hey guys, Buffner Gaming back, bringing you another video, and today I want to talk about Modern Warfare versus Battlefield, and is Modern Warfare the Battlefield killer, at least for the year 2019? And I think the answer is yes. So we're going to get into this here, and I myself am a long-time Battlefield player, as well as a long-time Call of Duty player. I believe my very first FPS game was way back on PlayStation 2, the original Killzone was my very first FPS online multiplayer game. And from there I branched out and I also played Call of Duty back on PC, I think Call of Duty 1 and Call of Duty 2. But as far as PlayStation, Killzone was my first game, and then I jumped into SOCOM, and then also Battlefield 2 Modern Combat, which was on the PS2. So that was released I think a year after the original Battlefield 2, which was the PC version, and then there was its own unique version of Battlefield 2 Modern Combat released on the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox, and later that was remastered on the Xbox 360. So starting off, let's take a look at Battlefield. Since I did start way back on PlayStation 2 with Battlefield 2 Modern Combat, obviously that was a Modern Combat game at the time that took place between US and Chinese factions. And Battlefield titles that followed were Battlefield Bad Company and Battlefield Bad Company 2, all modern titles. And then we got into Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. And then Battlefield decided to go down the road of Battlefield 1, going all the way back to World War I back in the early 1900s. And then from there, they decided the next best move after that would be World War II with Battlefield 5 or Battlefield V. So in the meantime, Call of Duty had already done World War II. So my main problem with Battlefield currently is that they went from a series of modern combat titles, which are arguably their very best sellers, starting with Battlefield 2 on PC, Battlefield 2 Modern Combat, Battlefield Bad Company series with 1 and 2, Battlefield 3 and 4. So the majority of the Battlefield series takes place in Modern Combat. And then Call of Duty also escalated out into the future, and they played around too. So they were where Battlefield was, playing with futuristic warfare, which Battlefield dabbled in with 2142. But now Call of Duty's gone back to what made Call of Duty with Modern Warfare. Obviously, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare is what really revolutionized the Call of Duty series, and now they're bringing it back to Call of Duty Modern Warfare back in a modern time period after they just came from World War II as well. So here's my problem, is that Call of Duty World War II did World War II before Battlefield did World War II, and now Call of Duty's gone back to the Modern Combat era before Battlefield's going to go back to Modern Combat. So the problem now is Battlefield is going to do Modern Combat game next year in 2020, and Call of Duty has already done that a year ahead. Same as they beat Battlefield to the World War II era again. So between Battlefield 1 and Battlefield V, the big question mark, what's the next Battlefield title going to be? Is it going to be Battlefield 5? Is it going to be a continuation from Battlefield 4 in the modern time period? Or is it going to go back to World War II, Back to the Future with 2143 maybe? What's the next step? Possibly a Cold War game. And back then I was arguing that they should not go to World War II because Call of Duty had just done World War II that year. So they'd be repeating what Call of Duty just did, and it would take away the excitement from the release of the Battlefield game. And then excluding Call of Duty from the picture, you had other titles for PC such as Hell Let Loose, for example, along with others releasing with the World War II time period as well. So now Battlefield would be releasing a World War II game after Call of Duty had already done it, along with 3 PC titles that are doing World War II experience also. So it makes Battlefield not a unique experience. And I remember at the time all the YouTubers such as Westy and Level Cap and everybody was arguing that World War II was the move that Battlefield needed to go to. It would be an easy development period since they could just copy a lot of the assets over from Battlefield 1, and it would be an easy development. And World War II is something on the new Frostbite engine that everybody wanted to see, and it turned out to be a complete disaster. Not only did Battlefield 5 release with no content, but the game today is still broken. Every patch they do breaks something, and the game is arguably the worst amongst all the Battlefield titles ever. And Battlefield is now developing this trend of releasing broken titles ever since Battlefield 3, which on console was not bad. On PC there was issues. Battlefield 4's release was horrible, but looking back now, Battlefield 4 is still to this very day a great game, and the only Battlefield that I still play along with Battlefield 3 when I go back and play Battlefield. Did not play Hardline, and Battlefield 1 I picked up for 4 months and it was interesting, and then it got extremely boring. Same with the World War II game. You can't relate to any of the weapons, any of the characters. It's not fun to play, and everything's broken. Battlefield mechanics have gotten worse over the years, and now here we are on the flip side with Call of Duty releasing what Battlefield always should have done. And with the 10v10, 20v20, and the modes that are going to support up to and over 100 players, now they're taking the Battlefield fan base that wanted modern combat titles and didn't get that, and instead they got World War I and World War II and a police shooter. So now Call of Duty's taking that core audience, saying, hey, we can boost up the player count even higher than Battlefield's 32v32 modes, and we're going to play 50v50 and even over. So now where does Battlefield go from here? And the answer is they have to go back to a Modern Combat title, but what's that going to be? And I did make a video a few months back speculating about Battlefield Bad Company 3 coming in 2020. And at this point, I'm not sure if Battlefield Bad Company 3 is the answer to Call of Duty Modern Warfare, because they need to come out with a competitive shooter that is going to have to be in the modern era, and it's going to have to be competitive with Call of Duty. And Battlefield Bad Company 3 would be a great game, but I don't know what's going to distinguish it apart from Modern Warfare. And now looking back at the last time Call of Duty and Battlefield really went head to head was Modern Warfare 3 and Battlefield 3. And Battlefield 3 was arguably, in my opinion, the best Battlefield besides Bad Company 2. And Bad Company 2 was only good for the multiplayer. Battlefield 3 was a more complete game because it had a very compelling and story-driven single-player mode. And since then, Battlefield has dropped the single-player mode for what's called war stories, where you have quick, short missions that tell a single story, and that's it. There's no linear campaign to tell an overall story. And if you look back at Battlefield 3 single-player, that was an amazing single-player, very well done, had a great story, compelling characters that you could relate to. You felt immersed. You felt like every decision you made had an impact on the world. And then Battlefield 4 couldn't have been less interested in that game. To be honest with you, by the time I reached the end of the campaign, I didn't even know what was happening, who we were fighting, or why. So it did a horrible job of pulling me in and making me invested in the story, whereas Battlefield 3 did a great job. And then on the flip side, Call of Duty, the original Modern Warfare trilogy, was one of the best single-player stories I've ever played in my life. And I think it holds up very well today, right alongside Battlefield 3. And now with Call of Duty Modern Warfare going to be delivering a great multiplayer experience for pretty much every first-person shooter audience, as well as an amazing single player. Supposedly, we haven't seen it yet, but all signs are pointing to realism and a really great story. And I think it's borrowing assets from a Medal of Honor Warfighter, which I've covered in some videos, as well as Battlefield as well. And I think they're doing a great job as far as incorporating industry standards and taking bits and pieces from every game that can be adopted into Call of Duty and make a complete modern first-person shooter that's really going to impact the market and make revolutionary changes for a AAA title. And I think Call of Duty Modern Warfare is going to be as revolutionary as COD 4 was back in the day, as it was praised for all of the new ideas and the new gameplay mechanics, and I think Modern Warfare is going to be doing the same thing, especially now with these larger modes. So what does Battlefield have to do next year to compete with this? And I personally think the answer is not Battlefield Bad Company 3, it's not even Battlefield 6, although I would really like to see a direct continuation from Battlefield 3 in that universe, because I thought that story was very good, and I thought the gameplay for the multiplayer was very immersive and made me feel, I think you felt like more of a soldier in that, whereas Battlefield 4, a little bit more on the arcadey side, where Battlefield 3, I guess, was more grounded in realism. I guess if you're looking for a mil sim, it was closer to it than 4 is what I'm trying to say, but obviously not a mil sim, still an arcade game, but it felt more impactful and immersive from a player perspective. So I think the answer is they need to go to a modern-ish era, and I think that is a Cold War scenario in the late 1980s, early 1990s, where the Soviet Union would invade the US. Very similar to the Red Dawn scenario in those movies, or even what you saw in Modern Warfare 2's campaign with Russia invading. But obviously this would take place in a alternate Cold War timeline. And I do have another video on that I'll link at the end of this video, where I go over that whole theory and what that storyline and the multiplayer would look like, and I think that's where they need to go with this. Battlefield is kind of disappointing to me right now. I go back and I play Battlefield 4 and I love it, and at heart I think I do probably love Battlefield more than Call of Duty, but Battlefield simply hasn't delivered since the end of 2013 when Battlefield 4 came out. And since then, as I've said, they produced Hardline, Battlefield 1, and Battlefield V, which have strayed so far from what made Battlefield Battlefield. Now here you have Call of Duty coming in and grabbing the attention of old Battlefield players like myself who love that modern combat game with large-scale battles and pulling us in and saying, hey, we can do it better. Now, obviously, Call of Duty's not going to do vehicles better than Battlefield, at least yet, but the scale of the battles and the immersion in the multiplayer realm with these 20v20 and even 50v50 or more games is going to be better than Battlefield, in my opinion, for now. Battlefield really needs to redeem themselves in 2020, and with EA and DICE skipping 2019 Battlefield release for development of a Star Wars game, and now they're on an alternate schedule of Battlefield, Star Wars, then Battlefield again, DICE and EA really need to deliver with the next Battlefield title, whatever it may be, and it really needs to be modern combat, whatever they do, and it needs to be a military style shooter. They can't have a police shooter, they can't have a World War I, World War II, or even a Vietnam era shooter. It needs to be modern or it needs to be Cold War era, which would in fact be modern. I think the Cold War era, you would have a lot of the same weapons you would have in the modern combat era as in today, and it might even be a better era to do because you wouldn't have such advances in technology, but you would still have things like Apaches, F-16s, F-18s, MiGs, etc. You have a lot of the same vehicles, just without a lot of the technologically advanced gadgets. So I really want to see where Battlefield goes next year, but for right now, I'm 100% bought into Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and I'm really excited to play their large-scale modes as well as the classic modes like the 6v6s, the search and destroys, and especially the 2v2 mode, which is coming out in the alpha this weekend. And depending on when you're watching this video, that may have passed, but this weekend, August 23rd, 2019, the 2v2 alpha is coming out for Call of Duty Modern Warfare. So we're finally gonna get our hands on that, followed by the beta, and I'm really excited to play that and see how this game actually feels hands-on, and then we can take a guess as to how that's gonna translate into these large-scale game modes, as well as we'll be able to get our hands on with that in September for the full beta. But back to the initial question, is Modern Warfare the Battlefield killer? And the answer is, for this year, yes, it is. In 2019, Modern Warfare is absolutely the Battlefield killer, with lack of interest in Battlefield 5, lack of support, lack of innovation, and the fact that each patch seems to be breaking things. And Battlefield fans that are still playing Battlefield 5 don't even like the game. A lot of the YouTubers, Level Cap, Westy, Jack Frags, they cover the game, but their videos are mostly complaining and negative about how the patches are breaking everything. And Battlefield had a chance to perhaps redeem itself with Firestorm, the Battle Royale mode, but that died off so fast that no one's even playing it anymore, so they had to reduce the server counts. So Battlefield has a chance to do something great in 2020, and I really hope they pull it off, but until then, Call of Duty is the Battlefield killer this time around. And I really look forward to 2020 and actually hopefully we see these two go head to head, with Black Ops 5 set to release in 2020, and then whatever the Battlefield title is. Battlefield should be able to take advantage of that situation going up against the weaker of the Call of Duty titles, and one that seems to be in a lot of trouble right now with David Vonderhaar just getting released from Treyarch and Activision. So we're gonna have to wait and see. But for right now, as I said, all about Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Can't wait to bring you guys gameplay. Let me know what you think down below. I know this is a long video, so if you stuck with me, thank you very much. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more information to come for Call of Duty, gameplay, as well as Battlefield. I'll be covering that going forward too if they come out with a decent game. And until next time, Buffner Gaming, out.